Hi, this is Tara. Today we're studying Sutra number 43. smṛti-pariśuddhau, sva-rūpa-śūnya-iva-artha-mātra-nirbhāsā nirvitarkā. Smriti, memory; pari, complete; shuddha, purification; sva-rūpa, own character, own nature; shunya, empty; iva, as if; artha, purpose, meaning, also can mean wealth; matra, nothing but; nirbhāsā, shining forth; nirvitarkā is refined gross deliberation. What does Maharishi Vedavyasa say? He says distinctive, that is wordless. If you remember, the first one was indistinct, verbal. This is distinctive, wordless thought transformation, is that in which the mind shines out as the object alone on the cessation of memory and is, as it were, devoid of its own nature. So do refer back to Sutra 42 and 41, where the gurus basically are explaining the 4 kinds of Samapatti. The first is distinct verbal, the second is distinctive wordless. So basically we are going into a higher plane of perception of samadhi, in this samadhi, which is nirvitarkā. And he says that thought transformation becomes distinctive. Samapatti becomes distinctive at the time when the memory of the fictions of verbal convention, verbal and inferential knowledge ceases. So if you remember, the Sutra 42 is about the word, the form of the word that the word takes, and the meaning of the word, right? So these color the mind about the nature of the object. When it, as it were, gives up its own nature of conscious cognition, and when therefore it only shows out the nature of the object and has, as it were, transformed into the shape of the object itself, and so it has been explained. The object itself is but a single output of the effort of that thought transformation of the mind. Let me try and explain this in a simple way. Let's say we have an apple. And I know the minute I said the word apple, you already have a picture that has come into your mind. Okay? And that picture, now, if you contemplate a little further, has a meaning. So you have the word apple, the form apple, and the meaning of the apple. And it's basically its signification. So you might be thinking of its juice, its taste, how crisp it is, how red it is, its color. You might be thinking meal, you might be thinking apple a day keeps the doctor away. So many things come to your mind when you think of the meaning of the apple. You might think of a worm, right? There's a whole association of thoughts. When do you reach distinctive wordless thought transformation? When the word is dropped. In that stage of samadhi, in which the memory, the minute I said apple, what came up in your mind was memory. Okay, it is what in Buddhism Buddhist philosophy we call the second cognition, the second cognizer. There's a primary cognition the first time you see an apple. The second time the word apple is mentioned to you, what comes up is first from memory. Okay, so there is a distance. When you reach distinct wordless, this word, this form, and this meaning has disappeared. The fictions of verbal convention no longer describe that object to you, present that object to you. They are not in between you and the object. What only exists without verbal conventions, without labels, without form, without extrapolated meaning, is just the pure object itself. Okay, this is what he is saying. The visible world, the cow, etc., consists each in its own nature. So the object now that is in front of you exists in its own nature. It is not imputed nature. Please remember this. It is not a name that we have prescribed to it. It is not a form that we have decided it must have. It is not a meaning that comes up in memory. It is a generic quality and constitutes the very nature of the object. It is inferred by its visible effect. It has the form of its cause. It shows itself and exists. When other characteristics, such as the half jar, cow, etc., arise, it disappears. This characteristic, which the self-evident form, visual impact, is the substratum, the independent whole, the avyavai, okay, is the substratum. It is this substratum which is being spoken of as one, large or small, tangible or intangible, or possessing the quality of action or transitory. Okay. To him, however, who does not believe this to be an independent reality, and for whom the subtle cause does not admit of perception, there is, of course, no substratum, and therefore all knowledge is false, being untrue knowledge and not having the form of the real. What does he say here? A bit complicated. It's not. What he's saying is, what if I don't fundamentally believe that the substratum has an independent reality? So I have done away with word, I have done away with form, I have done away with meaning of the form and word. The object is presenting itself to me without interruption. But I don't fundamentally believe that that substratum of presence exists. Therefore, any knowledge that I'm deriving from it also does not exist. Okay. Hence, there is a substratum independent of constituent parts, which being spoken of as being large, is the object of the distinctive thought transformation. Swami Satyananda always simplifies it a little for us. I have to say he's a little bit of my favorite. After the clarification of memory, when the mind is as if devoid of self-awareness, and the true knowledge of the object is alone shining within, that is nirvitarkā. Now, nirvitarkā is the samadhi without augmentation, without a confusion of the three aspects of the object, that is name, form, and meaning, as we have seen. In it, there is neither the subjective awareness of the object nor of the word. Memory becomes absolutely free of past impressions and associations. So he says, usually our memory is not clear. For us, memory constitutes a collection of past impressions. Smriti, however, if you know the 5 ways of perception, okay, smriti is an independent awareness on which the impressions are embedded. And even if everything of the past is cleared up, smriti remains. So please remember that when they were teaching us, okay, in the first, from Sutra 5 to Sutra 11, when they're teaching us about the aspects of perception, that is right perception, wrong perception, there's imagination, there is memory, and then there is sleep. Smriti, memory, is a very important part of perception. So we are not saying throw out memory, okay? We're saying clarify memory, okay? Swami Satyananda explains this point. It's a very important point. I don't know if many of the other bhashyas have it. He says, smriti is independent awareness on which the impressions are embedded. And even if everything of the past is cleared up, smriti remains. On the tablet of smriti, there are past impressions which present themselves in deeper states. In the waking states, the reproduction is brought about by conscious thinking, but in samadhi, they come up on their own. Sometimes in this deeper state of consciousness, impressions of early childhood are seen, but if all those impressions are cleared up, then memory does not disappear, because memory is different from impressions. It is as if the brain is different from mind or thought. Similarly, the vritti called memory is different from past impressions. Smriti is awareness of one's own self. If you have no memory, you basically don't have a consciousness of yourself. Right? You don't know who you are. You don't know where you've come from. So he's saying that all these things that we consider memory are actually impressions. When the impressions are cleared up, smriti or memory still remain. It is a body of self-aware knowledge, is essentially what he's saying. Smriti can be purified by different sadhanas, and then it becomes sva-rūpa-śūnya-iva. It is a state of self-awareness, and it appears as if everything has become void, but actually it is not void. The word eva is used to show that although you are not aware of the object, still the object is there. That is when the past impressions of the object. So, in the last sutra, he gave us the example of Shivlinga. Okay, you're looking at a Shivlinga, you have the name, you have the form that comes to mind, you contemplate the meaning and you get a certain knowledge from it. Now he's saying, when the past impressions of the object such as Shivlinga are gone, you are not aware of the Shivlinga. And it appears as if your mind has become absolutely devoid of the impression of the Shivlinga, though it is not so. The smrti does not become free of the impressions of the Shivlinga, but the impressions permeate the entire structure of your awareness. Every part of it becomes filled up with the impression of the Shivlinga. So in this state, the mind loses its subjective awareness. Here, the mind loses the knowledge of the object, although the awareness and the knowledge are present in the mind. There is this merging quality, okay, where the name is gone, the form of previous impression is gone, the meaning extrapolated from that is gone. Only the object in itself exists. Mind has lost its subjective awareness. It feels as though it's in a void, but the object exists. That is the peculiarity. You remember that you're concentrating on the Shivlinga, then next there is only the Shivlinga, and you do not remember that you are concentrating on it. Okay? So again, there comes a time when the Shivlinga is also seen, although the awareness that you are meditating is gone. So there is this sort of merging that happens in the second state of Samadhi, Samapatti, nirvitarkā. And it's the Shivlinga itself is kind of subsumed, okay, in this absorption. And he says you come to a point where the Shivlinga is seen, but you don't have a concept of seeing it or a separate memory of it. The whole mind appears to have become completely void, but it is not actually so. Just as salt mixes completely and inseparably with water, in the same way, this form of awareness of the object, say the Shivlinga, completely fills the whole mind, though it cannot be known separately. It is because the mind is completely permeated with the memory of the object. This is known as parishuddhi, that is the complete purification of memory. Thus, purification of memory is the cause of sva-rūpa-śūnya-iva. It is necessary to remember the subtle point that if the smrti is not pure, the mind will slip into blankness. If the smrti is purified, then the object will permeate the whole of consciousness and become one with the state of the mind. Mind and object will become one. The mind and memory of the form become inseparable. Memory does not exist separately. At that time, there comes a momentary experience of void, shunya. It is the state of laya, in which the consciousness of memory of the object merges completely in the mind. For a moment, the mind blinks and sleeps. In that sleeping state, the presentation of memory is not there. In that state, true knowledge of the object shines within. This is the difference between nirvitarkā samadhi and laya. In the former, there is true knowledge. For example, the Shivlinga has vanished and behind it you may see a bright light. The true knowledge will appear. It is revealed to the aspirant. The difference between the inner and outer state is completely lost. In dream, the experience is very intense, but in nirvitarkā samadhi, it is less intense. It is far more intense, sorry. You should be aware of the real knowledge or real form of the object of concentration, for otherwise you may be misled with your own mind. When you come to nirvitarkā state, you will have to know the real form of the symbol, whether it is a rose or a Shivlinga. When true knowledge is to emerge in the nirvitarkā state, the form is to be brought about once again, and that form is not of Shiva but of Shakti, because the subjectivity of the mind is lost. It is not the mind which thinks or dreams or sleeps. The state of mind is very definite because of the absence of memory, and so you never remember the experiences of meditation because the normal consciousness is not functioning. The example he gives is, say an ant is unable to see the elephant. Okay, to see it, the ant must grow in size. The ant, when it looks up at an elephant, may see a form, but doesn't have a very definite concept of that form. To get a definite concept of that form, it must grow in size. In the same way, the conscious mind is not allowed to penetrate the state of meditation. Thereafter, a different state of mind takes charge of your awareness, and the conscious Purusha stops walking, and another Purusha takes its place. This state continues up to a certain point, and there it stops. Okay, so now let's look at. I know this is a little sort of complex, but let's look at what he was saying again about the light behind the Shivlinga. You might be wondering a little bit about that. So what he's saying is the mind has the capacity to fabricate, okay, which is wrong perception, imagination, right? In the process of this samadhi, absorption, in which we are without name, without form, without meaning, we're merging the mind with the object of absorption, okay? You have to have a very clear idea of what this object that you're absorbing your mind into is. Otherwise, the mind can go into wrong perception and fabrication, right? So, which is why this is the second layer. The first layer of word object form is very important. It's not, oh, I'm too great for that. I just go straight to absorbing my mind with this, which we sometimes like to do in our spiritual egotism. If you don't know the form that you are meditating upon, mind is a trickster and it can start creating things that are not real. But the thing is, once the mind absorbs into the object completely, then the real form of the object emerges. And it could be that you're looking at a Shivlinga and what emerges really is Shakti, is what he's saying. Okay? Because you've lost the subjectivity of the mind. So you're seeing it for what it is. Right? So it's very interesting. So he says the conscious Purusha stops, another Purusha takes its place, takes you up to a certain point, third Purusha takes you further. Likewise, you progress through different planes of consciousness until you reach where Ishvara Pranidhana. And he says it is not even mind which dreams, which remains aware of the dreams and remembers in the morning. The state of mind is a different state. If at all you have achieved this blessed state, it may not even be possible for you to remember it because of the absence of the same memory. That state of mind is different and this state of mind is different. And unless you're able to bring that mind into operation here, you may not be able to remember what you have seen. If you remember the experience of meditation, samadhi, either you have not achieved meditation, or if at all you have achieved meditation, then your normal consciousness is of a very high order. So, a lot of us, we take these meditation classes, courses, and we come out and we say, we sit and we, meditate every day. And we say, every day I'm attaining the state of bliss. I'm very, very peaceful. My mind goes into this tranquil zone. Most of the time, we're either imagining it or we're lying to ourselves, maybe if not to others. Right? Why is that? Because, as he says, when you go further and further into samadhi, you're not remembering the object of perception. You can't. It's a different state. If you can remember it, then your layers of mind are more merged. So you're either a great yogi, which most of us, to be frank, are not, okay? And or we are fabricating. The mind is playing tricks on us. And he says, in this context, we may quote one of the most misunderstood clauses of the Garuda Purana. It is usually recited when a family member dies. It talks about hell, heaven, tortures in the kingdom of the Lord of Death. It says after death, the jiva is taken to various planes. And he says this is a misinterpretation. We should understand the Purana is talking about the transcending position of consciousness. Thus, it should be understood that various Purushas conduct the mind to deeper and deeper states of superconsciousness. This is because the conscious mind does not function in the nirvitarkā state. So, to sum up, the nirvitarkā state involves the purification of smrti, which gives rise to true knowledge of the object of concentration. Swami Vivekananda says the samadhi called without reasoning, the savitarka samapatti, is with reasoning, using the logical mind. Here, this samadhi is called without reasoning, comes when the memory is purified or devoid of qualities, expressing only the meaning of the meditated object. It is by practice of meditation of these three that we come to the state where these three do not mix. We can get rid of them. So, say you've practiced savitarka sufficiently, okay, and you can see immediately the separation between word, form, and meaning. Okay, now you can get rid of it. We will first try to understand what these are. Here's the chitta. Remember the simile of the lake, the mind stuff, vibration, word, sound, like a pulsation coming over it. You have that calm lake in you. And I pronounce the word cow. As soon as it enters through your ears, there's a wave produced in your chitta along with it. This is the still chitta, in which you have gotten rid of most of the vrittis. As soon as you hear the word cow, it creates a ripple. As soon as it enters through your ears, there's a wave produced in your chitta. That wave represents the idea of the cow, the form, the meaning. The apparent cow that you know is really that wave in the mind stuff. And that comes as a reaction to the internal and external sound vibrations. And with the sound, the wave dies away. The wave cannot exist without a word. You may ask yourself how it is when we only think of the cow and do not hear a sound. You make that sound yourself. You are saying cow faintly in your mind, and with that comes a wave. There cannot be a wave without this impulse of sound, and when it is not from outside, it is from inside. And when the sound dies, the wave dies. What remains? The result of the reaction, and that is knowledge. So you're basically going directly to the deeper signification of what is cow, without the word, without the symbol, without the sound, without the meaning, and directly you are perceiving cow. These three are so closely combined in our mind that we cannot separate them. When the sound comes, the senses vibrate, the wave rises in reaction. They follow so closely that there's no discerning one from the other. When this meditation has been practiced for such a long time, memory, the receptacle of all impressions, becomes purified, and we are clearly able to distinguish them one from the other. This is called nirvitarkā, concentration without reasoning. It's beautiful, to this understanding of the levels of the mind. I have to say, as somebody who's trained in counseling psychology, though I know to a much lesser level than a lot of people, there is no such mapping of the layers of thought and mind anywhere in the Western world as there is in the Buddha's work and in Patanjali's work. So B.K. Iyengar says, in Nirvitarka Samapatti, the difference between memory and intellectual illumination is disclosed, memory is cleansed, and consciousness shines without reflection. How does he explain it? He says, when memory is completely cleansed and purified, mind is also purified. Both cease to function as distinct entities. A no mind state is experienced, and consciousness alone manifests itself, shining unblemished without reflection of external objects. This is called nirvitarka samadhi. So, memory is recollection of past thoughts and experiences. It is the storehouse of impression, and its knowledge is reflected knowledge. Now, the sadhaka should be aware, B.K. Iyengar says, that memory has tremendous impact on intelligence. By perseverance in yoga and discipline, new experiences surface. These new experiences, free from the memories of the past, are fresh, direct, and subjective, and they expunge what is remembered. Then memory ceases to function as a separate entity. It either merges with consciousness or takes a back seat, giving predominance to new experiences and bringing clarity to intelligence. For the average person, memory is past mind. For the enlightened man, memory is present mind. As memory is purified, intelligence becomes illuminative and moves closer to the seer, losing its identity. This is nirvitarka samapatti. Even for the untracked mind, there's a right and wrong use of memory, he says. It's not for recollecting pleasure, but for establishing a fund of experience as a basis for further correct action and perception. So the way that we use memory in modern times is more to think about people we miss, experiences, pleasure, basically, But that's not even the right function of past impression. It is to have a fund of experience on which to base our future action. So he says in asana, for example, we start with trial and error. These fruits of experiments are graded by the discriminating intelligence and stored in the memory. As we progress, trial and error decreases and correct perception increases. So memory provides foresight against error. So the example he gives us in the handstand, something that usually goes wrong is that the upper arm shortens. So memory warns us, be aware before it happens. So because we have the past impression of the thing going wrong, for me, for instance, I find in halasana, my spine compresses. Okay, and then the reach is more difficult, your breathing is more difficult. So as soon as you take halasana, for me, the memory comes up, keep the spine erect. Okay, so don't allow it to collapse or compress. So memory warns us, be aware before it happens. Discriminating experience awakens consciousness awareness with discrimination, and memory breaks down bad habits, which are repeated actions based on wrong perception, and replaces them with their opposite. In this process, the brain must be creative and not mechanical. The mechanical brain questions only the external phenomena, bringing objective knowledge. The creative brain calls into question the inner and outer, bringing subjective and spiritual knowledge. In asana, he says, this is a very interesting point. He says, in asana, understanding begins with the inner skin. In pranayama, with the inner membrane of the nose. These are the starting points of spiritual quest in asana and pranayama. In this way, virtuous character is built up. When awareness is linked to intelligence, honesty is brought into being. When brain and body move in harmony, there's integrity. In all this process of tapas, memory supports the building up process. When memory functions perfectly, it becomes one with intelligence. At this point, memory, which has originally dug so many pits for us, transforms itself into a true guru. What he's basically saying is awareness links to intelligence, creates honesty, brain and body move in harmony, creates integrity. In this process, we're able to progress in our tapasya. Memory supports the building up process by storing what is the right way to do things, to move. And when memory functions well, it merges with intelligence, and we use this intelligence and we are able to train ourselves. Osho says, nirvitarkā samadhi is attained when the memory is purified and the mind is able to see the true nature of things without obstruction. True to form, Osho meanders a bit. He says the mind is kind of like a computer. It accumulates all that is experienced through many lives, millions of experiences, vast phenomenon, and all your past lives are stored in it. Okay? And a pure mind is that mind who's a master of its own memories. An impure mind is that mind who's continuously impressed by the memories. So it's about how you use what is stored within there. He says, whenever you see a fact, if you see it directly without the mind and memory coming in, only then it's a fact. Otherwise, it becomes an interpretation, something that can be said about all news in today's age. And all interpretations are false because all interpretations are loaded by your past experience. You can only see things which are in tune with your past experience. So anything is true now if it fits in with your past experience. If it doesn't fit, it's a lie. So what he's basically saying is that the mind, in order to gain the state of samadhi, has to be fresh. It basically has to be beginner's mind. It cannot create layers between you and the object. Interpretation is the obstruction. Interpret, reality is lost. Look without interpretation, reality is there, and you'll realize it has always been there. So reality means that which is real. It has not moved from its place. Okay, now I'm jumping ahead a little bit because he's a little long-winded. Barbara Stoller Miller, who says, when memory is purified, then contemplative poise is free of conjecture, empty of its own identity, with the object alone shining forth. In the non-conjectural mode, she calls the first one the conjectural mode, that is verbal indistinct. Distinct non-verbal is, she calls, the non-conjectural mode. The preconceived names and identities of object are eliminated, memory is cleansed, distinction between the knower, process of perception and object dissolves, Contemplative poise is pure when the fictions of verbal convention and inferential knowledge fall away, then thought without any conscious effort to know is pervaded by the nature of the object of meditation. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was useful to you. Do like, share, subscribe, do leave comments, questions, or your own interpretations. Come back tomorrow for Sutra number 40.